Oh, thanks be to the Lord, you're home, ma'am.
It's all right, Mary. The storm hasn't broken
It
yet.
isn't the storm, ma'am. It's the master.
My husband? What's wrong?
He's after having the most dreadful argument.
With whom?
Lord Warminster, ma'am. They're in the sitting room.
Thank you, Mary. That'll be all.
Buried yesterday. It's extraordinary, isn't it? Don't you think so?
By all means.
They haven't even found him yet.
If they haven't found him yet, how do they bury him?
Not him, the other one.
Did we finish the marmalade?
Is it empty? The raspberry jam's very good. Really, Holmes, Lord Warminster, a peer of the realm, has murdered his lawyer, Albert Neal, and disappeared. I should have thought even you'd be upset.
I am. I was looking forward to the marmalade.
That's probably Lord Warminster himself. I believe that he didn't murder anybody and he wants you to prove it.
My name is Lady Warminster. I would like to speak to Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
Lady Warminster, please come in.
Thank you.
This is Sherlock Holmes, Lady Warminster.
Holmes?
Lady Warminster. May I present my colleague, Dr. Watson?
How do you do? Please sit down.
Thank you. Have you read the morning newspaper, Mr. Holmes?
It's been read to me.
You're familiar with the case, Mr. Holmes?
Only superficially. Do you have any idea what motive your husband might have had to murder Mr. Neal?
I don't, Mr. Holmes.
And your husband disappeared that night?
Yes.
He's made no attempt to contact you?
None.
And the police view your husband's absence as proof of his guilt?
My husband could never commit a crime, Mr. Holmes.
I believe you're saying your husband could never commit an ordinary crime, such as theft.
And you're suggesting that even an honest man, if he's sufficiently provoked, could commit murder? I was going to ask you to prove my husband's innocence, Mr. Holmes. Instead, I ask you to reveal the facts and truth about what happened that night.
Regardless of who may be implicated by those facts?
You believe in facts, Mr. Holmes. I believe in my husband. I have no fear of the truth. Will you take the case, Mr. Holmes?
Yes, Lady Warminster, I'll take the case.
So, Mr. Holmes, you've been asked to take an interest in this case.
Yes, Stride.
Well, I'm not surprised. Lord Warminster's going to need all the help he can get. You've made up your mind that he's guilty? Oh, he's guilty, all right. There's no doubt about that. Holmes, did you see these blood stains?
I noticed them.
They cover quite a wide area. That would indicate a violent fight.
The same effect would result if the body were moved around on the floor.
Why should anyone do that?
I have no idea.
Lestrade, what was the cause of death? A heavy blow to the temple.
Which temple?
The right. No, the left. Wait a minute. The right.
You're certain?
I'm certain Mr. Neal is dead, Dr. Watson.
And the murder weapon, Lestrade?
Some sort of heavy club.
Like a candlestick.
Candlestick, walking stick, paperweight. He's dead.
Mrs. Mulligan, what time did Lord Warminster arrive here last night?
Just after 8.
And how did Lord Warminster appear?
Angry. Very angry. Hopping mad, I'd say.
I see. And how long is it since you lost your husband?
Well,
I said, how long is it since you lost your husband?
It was 8 years, sir. But how did you know I was a widow?
I didn't. But I was fairly certain that Inspector Lestrade had not lost his husband. So after Lord Warminster came in, there was an argument.
Oh, very loud, sir.
Lord Warminster didn't leave.
He went out through that window, Holmes.
I see. How did you establish that, Lestrade?
Murderers always go out windows. Standard procedure.
Who discovered the body, Mrs. Mulligan?
Mrs. Neal, sir, when she came home.
And she sent for the police at once?
Yes.
No. Mrs. Neal went into the living room, and I returned to the kitchen downstairs. Just when I got to the foot of the stairs, I heard Mrs. Neal scream. She was...
In a state of shock.
Yes, sir. And so I sent for the police, sir.
Were there any bruises on the face, Mrs. Mulligan, as though he...
Oh, it was all covered in blood. I couldn't look at the face.
Women are always like that. Can't stand the sight of blood.
Really?
Yes. Well, now you have all the facts.
What was the motive, Lestrade?
We'll ask Lord Warminster that when we find him. In the meanwhile, the facts that we have...
Our supposition and speculation. Or to put it succinctly, we have a wealth of evidence, no motive, and no facts at all.
Ah, Mrs. Neal. This is Mr. Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock Holmes?
Lady Warminster has asked Mr. Holmes to try and find her husband.
I'm not a vindictive person, but he came here and murdered my husband. And why?
Can you think of any motive for...
There was no motive. No, of course. That makes no sense either. There must have been a motive. For some reason.
I'm sorry to question you at this time, Mrs. Neal.
I understand.
If you should think of anything that might provide a motive, I'd appreciate your contacting me or Inspector Lestrade.
Of course.
Thank you, Mrs. Neal. I assume you have been watching Lord Warminster's house.
His home, his club, his office, everywhere he might turn up.
And this house?
Oh, come now, Holmes. You don't still believe the murderer returns to the scene of the crime. Well, have a good day, gentlemen.
You're concerned about a motive, or lack of it. Well, I've been thinking. Yes? I don't even like making this suggestion, but it might explain... Yes? What if there'd been a relationship between Lord Warminster and Mrs. Neal? I mean, I'm only suggesting. I understand. What if there had been something between Lord Warminster and Mrs. Neal, and Mr. Neal had found out? That would provide a motive, don't you agree? And then? Well, then there would have been a confrontation between the two men, and Lord Warminster would have killed him. It's simple and obvious.
Well, congratulations, Watson. You've solved another case. Unfortunately, not this one. These are the papers that were on your husband's desk the night he left to see Mr. Neal.
Yes. The police examined them, of course. They did not consider them important.
Lady Warminster, Did your husband carry much money with him?
I thought about that too, Dr. Watson. He rarely carried more than a few pounds. I don't know what he could be living on.
Holmes, do you think it was something that Lord Warminster found here, or something that he knew before he came home?
Excellent, Watson. Excellent. I believe we can assume it was something he found here upon his return, or else he would have gone directly to the new house.
What could it have been, Mr. Holmes? The police say there's nothing in those letters or papers.
Well, there is no letter to match this envelope from Messrs. Goldhawk and Scrimshaw.
They are our bankers.
Watson, I would like you to do something that is in your professional capacity.
Certainly.
I would like you to reach Inspector Lestrade at Scotland Yard and exhume the body of Mr. Neal.
And take some tissue to compare with the bloodstains found on the carpet in the Neal's library.
Thank you, Watson. I'll meet you back at Baker Street.
Excuse me, Lady Warminster. I'll see myself out.
Of course, Dr. Watson. Is it important what you've asked Dr. Watson to do?
Yes. Lady Warminster, is it possible that there was a relationship between your husband and Mrs. Neal?
If Inspector Lestrade had asked me that question, I would have said it was ridiculous. But I am speaking to Sherlock Holmes, and though the suggestion may sound ridiculous, it is possible.
Thank you. We will accept that it is possible, but your opinion is...
My opinion is that it is impossible. But that would explain the motive that everyone is looking for.
Very conveniently. But this time I agree with you, Lady Warminster, and say... unlikely. And to solve this case, that is what we must do. The unlikely.
Bloody ridiculous, dragging me from my house for this. I was just sitting down to my supper. I'm sorry, Inspector. Kippers. It won't take long. I like kippers. You'll be home in an hour. They'll be cold. Nothing worse than cold kippers. Yes, unless it's cold tea. These blood tests are very important. So is my supper. Scientific mumbo-jumbo. The man's dead. What more do you need to know? Holmes said. Oh, Dr. Watson, don't mention that name to me on an empty stomach.
All right, you can come out now, Albert. She's gone.
Did you get the money?
Yes.
How much did you get?
£25.
25 pounds?
I can't get any more until your will has been dealt with, Albert. You're dead, remember?
But I must have money. I've got to get away.
Then you'll have to do what you've always done. You'll have to steal some.
Steal?
You murdered Lord Warminster. Why do you cringe at theft?
I didn't mean to kill him. I've told you. He was going to bring in an auditor.
You would have found that you've been stealing from him for years.
That's not important now. I need money. Where do we get it?
Not we, Albert. You.
No, Elizabeth. We. It won't be long before Holmes contacts the bankers and discovers I'm a swindler. And then it might occur to him that you might have lied about which man you identified as the corpse. Oh, I don't think they'll arrest you for protecting your dear husband who you love so deeply. But you'll have nothing. Not this house, not the clothes on your back. Send Lady Warminster a note, saying that her husband has contacted you and that he needs money to get to the continent. And if she hasn't enough money, she can bring her jewelry. She'll bring it.
I'm sure she will. But that won't stop her from speaking to Holmes in the morning. Oh. I see. You plan to kill her, too?
Not here. I'll find a quiet place.
And when she's found, they'll think her husband did it.
It's a perfect crime in its way. And they can only hang me once anyway.
All right. We've buried him, and we've dug him up. Why don't we just put him back and tell Holmes he disappeared? Now, that'll give him a real mystery to worry about.
We can open it now, Inspector.
Open it, so we can all go home.
Easy now, lads. Careful, careful.
Warminster fought with Neil and killed him, and mark my words, when we find Warminster, he'll confess. I don't think so, Inspector. It sounds more like Holmes every day. Warminster killed Neil. It's crystal clear. We've solved another case, Inspector. Unfortunately, not this one.
You'll know everything in a moment, Lady Warminster.
Mr. Neal. My husband is dead.
Yes.
You killed him. Why did you send for me? To finance your escape. I see. And you plan to kill me.
Only if you force me to.
My maid knows that I've come here.
Which is why we must leave immediately. You have no choice, Lady Warminster. I have no choice.
What are we doing here? Can't do anything here. We should be in Scotland Yard.
What would we do in Scotland Yard?
What would we do in Scotland Yard? Scotland Yard standard procedure. That's what we'd be doing in Scotland Yard.
Holmes said to meet him here.
Holmes said, what does he care? He's had his supper. Does Holmes know everything?
He knew enough to send us to the cemetery.
He'll send us all to the cemetery.
Hampstead Heath, cabby. This isn't Hampstead Heath, cabby.
No, Mr. Neal, this is Baker Street. Constable, take this man into custody and hold him for Inspector Lestrade. Lady Warminster.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes.
You had it all wrong, Holmes. Oh, good evening, Lady Warminster.
Good evening, Inspector Lestrade.
Holmes had it all wrong. You won't believe this, Holmes, but the killer is Neil. Dr. Watson was with me. Isn't that true, Dr. Watson?
That is true.
And it's my guess that Mrs. Neil is in on it, too. Don't worry.
We'll find her, and we'll find him too. I'll have all my men on the streets tonight. We'll scour the city, and...
Thank you. Tell me, Holmes, what was in that letter that made Lord Warminster run to the Neil house?
His bankers had discovered that there was a large discrepancy in his account.
But why did Neil kill him?
So that he wouldn't be exposed as a thief.
When did you first suspect that the bodies had been switched?
Yes, Holmes, I must say that that never occurred to me, though I thought that my idea that Neil suspected Lord Warminster was having an affair with his wife was a good one. As I say, it wasn't true, but it was a logical possibility.
We had been told that Lord Warminster had rushed out of his house. I don't believe that one rushes to meet an outraged husband who might be tempted to bash your head in with a blunt instrument. Under the circumstances you suggested, Watson, a man would walk slowly. Very, very slowly.
Good evening, Constable.
Good evening, sir.
That's a real pea super.
Yes. Mind your steps, sir.
Thank you. I shall.
Shocking. Ghastly.
What's ghastly?
Was a mysterious body found hanging from a street lamp. Not a clue. Police have no theories to... What's that?
What?
That tea.
It's a West African poison. Leaves absolutely no trace.
In the teapot?
Remember the Chatsworth murder? The police never identified the cause of death. I'll wager this was it.
Best teapot.
I'll have the pot cleaned out and ready for use by tea time.
Don't worry, I shall never drink another drop from that teapot.
Why not? You have before. Last week in this very same pot.
Please don't tell me.
Wait for me, cabby.
A gentleman is coming here.
How do you deduce that?
Through keen, analytical, inductive reasoning. Besides, the man was talking to the driver who pointed to this address. The gentleman has now entered the building.
What else can you deduce about our visitor?
Let me see. Early 30s, good tweeds, fashionably cut. I would say a man of means. What do you think?
I don't know. I'm not at the window.
It's very simple to deduce things based on what one sees. Sherlock Holmes ought to be able to tell me about the man before he sees him.
A gentleman doesn't normally call on someone without an appointment unless the matter is both unusual and pressing.
What else?
He just came up to town from the country and he...
How do you know that he came up from the country?
A gentleman, as you describe him, does not normally wear tweeds in town.
You wear tweeds in town.
I'm Sherlock Holmes.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Devon. I don't have an appointment, but I would like to speak to Mr. Sherlock Holmes.